What's up, guys? Fortuna here. We're looking at a tournament round from 2 weekends ago at the Broken Open in Leonard, Michigan. It's at Addison Oaks. This originally was a tournament I wanted to go play. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get into the tournament, so I figured I would actually record the round while I was there for the final round and try to give my own hand at doing some tournament coverage, seeing as I don't see too much coverage coming out of Michigan, and it's kind of cool to see local guys play. So we're going to be following a couple of buddies of mine, and they're actually really good. We got Ziggy, Bierekoven, Jeff Bauman, Daymon, Pugh, and George Beno. So hopefully you guys stick around for the round. It's actually pretty good. I apologize for the last couple holes. I did run out of battery, so I had to record them on my buddy's iPhone. But overall, I think the overlay and everything that was captured is pretty good, and I'm going to do some commentary to actually talk you guys through the holes and everything and point out the shots and everything, because it's actually a fairly wooded course. There are a handful of open holes, but I would say the majority is tight lines through a bunch of trees. It's a really pretty course, and it is quite deuce or die style play. So let's go watch the round.
Perfect. Nice putt, man. Alright, so starting on hole 1 is 476 feet. And it's kind of a peninsula hole. You can play it safe, or you can try to go for it. You can try to sneak through the trees across there. You can actually throw a big hyzer, but all these guys are pretty much all throwing the same shot. It's just a safe little hyzer about 300 feet or so with something stable that you know is going to go left, so you can actually throw an easy upshot across the water through one of the multiple gaps in between all the trees there. And all the shots are pretty identical. Here's Jeff also lining up his hyzer. He's also throwing a signature Zach Fortuna felon, which is awesome. And then here we got George. Excuse me. And he was kind of worried about these guys on the left side of the screen. And as you can see here, as he throws this shot, this guy is going to try to do something spectacular. There he goes, throws a hyzer, throws it a little left than what he wanted. We ended up all yelling at him, and he still tries catching the disc out of midair. And he ends up actually picking up his disc and then sets it back down after we told him to just drop the disc. So this is where everyone ended up, or everyone estimated his lie to be. And it's kind of hard to see the basket in between the trees, but we'll actually zoom in here in a second. And he's just looking to get up and down for par, just like everybody else. Trying to make this putt across the water is at least like an 80 to 90 foot attempt. So not necessarily in the over 50% wheelhouse, but nice easy 3 on the first hole is not a bad thing. And as you can see, they're just going right down the line, starting with Jeff, then Daymon, and Ziggy just also laying up here. And then we just got everybody tapping out. Nobody ended up too long or anything. Just wanted to show that these putts aren't that far away from the bucket. They should all be within the made wheelhouse for all these guys. As we can barely see George in his team camo Discraft shirt. Then we got hole 2. It's 310 feet. Also par 3, just like the rest of the course. And that path is OB, so path and left is OB. And you're kind of trying to pure it up the middle of the gap here and have it tail off left. And that there's a little early tree kind of kicks him out of bounds, unfortunately. And Ziggy here is throwing his pink compass. Again, everyone here was trying to go up the middle. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of wind, so it's a little tough to read what your discs are going to actually do in the wind. His holds a little straight, and he ends up in the rough, as you can see down the fairway. Jeff ended up actually throwing a little more stable than what Ziggy did, but it seemed like it still held over a little too long on him and still ended up catching the side of the rough. And George also trying to compensate, and the wind just holds it a little longer, and he catches that same rough just like everybody else, unfortunately. So after the OB stroke, there's Daymon throwing an Anheuser over the OB and puts himself within a good striking distance to at least get his bogey 4.
Get in.
And Jeff ended up rolling backwards somehow from hitting actually right here where George was at back to the left side, but he gets up and down pretty easily. And George is kind of tucked in there pretty well. It's kind of hard to see the line that he had to take, but he was lining up a sidearm. And that's tough. These shots are real tricky, especially being so close. You want to be up there. So he ends up getting a good kick off that tree rolling towards it, but it just doesn't sit down and just gets one of the craziest death rolls. But luckily doesn't go OB. But yet it was still pretty disastrous. We were all pretty in awe of how ridiculous that roll was. Because, I mean, he got the fortunate roll that actually rolled toward the basket and then just did not want to sit down. And then here's Ziggy, just a little closer than where George was at. Has a weird look at a birdie. He has to stay right around that tree, and he has to hyzer with the hill to try to give it a run. Just barely missed it. I thought for sure he had that. And then there's Daymon sneaking in his bogey. And everybody else is just pretty much tapping in here. There's a nice angle from where Jeff was at. Chain's catching it really, really well right there, as you could see. And here's George for bogey, unfortunately, after that crazy roll. So hole 3, again, it's kind of tough to see a lot of these holes where they're located, so I tried to angle it to where it's all going to be in the center of the screen. But you should be able to follow it all fairly easily. And this hole's just about 300 feet, plays over a creek, and there is a road to the right that is OB as well as the creek. Jeff unfortunately gets gobbled up by those branches a little bit. Daymon puts a good line on it. And unfortunately catches one of the guardian trees coming in the middle. If he would have missed that, that would have been parked. And I think George was looking to have that turn a little more, and he hit the same tree that Jeff did, and unfortunately he fell OB into the creek right here, so he is looking to get up and down for bogey. He sneaks it through the trees and is parked for his bogey. And I believe they called Jeff's lie out of bounds as well. So there he was, just getting up and down. And there's Daymon hidden in the bushes, almost throws it in for his 2. And Ziggy here has the closest lie. He's looking to give it a run, was just a little left. And this hole is one of the cooler holes on this course. I personally like it a lot. It's basically a big turnover. I had the camera set up thinking that these guys were going to be throwing big turnover shots, but they all ended up throwing rollers, which is probably the smarter shot. Seeing as when you get closer to the pin, there's actually a bunch of guardian trees, so throwing the roller and staying low of all the foliage is really smart, trying to roll up the hill. But I play it just throwing the big turnover and trying to play the crashing through the trees, because either way you throw it, it's really hard to just get up to the pin You'll see here in a little bit. And Jeff just kind of doesn't hold right enough for him and just hits the tree straight ahead. And George here seems to get one of the nicest rollers out of the group. And as you can see here, there's a bunch of guardian trees, lots of heavy foliage, about 10 feet up. So Jeff's just looking to get up and down. It's a really difficult shot, as you can clearly see, but he's got that awesome felon of his and just pimps the hole. And he's like 3 feet away from the pin, probably. Everybody here is just looking to get up and down. Throwing it in for 2 is pretty impressive, but taking a 3 on this hole is not a bad score. And you can see the pin there. George parks it. Ziggy's the closest, so I guess he had the best roller out of the entire group. But this is definitely within his range. He's looking to at least hit metal on this one, I'm sure. Just a hair short. That would have been a really nice 2. It's almost eagle worthy. And that's where Daymon's ends up and just cleans up his par. Now we move on to hole 5. It's 320 feet.
It's the serious balloons.
And it's definitely a sidearm hole or a good anhyzer if you got it. But the anhyzer is pretty tough because you kind of got to keep it low and then it tracks right pretty good. And Ziggy gets pretty close, so you want to aim basically towards the tree that he almost hits and flare right fairly hard. Or if you can throw something a little faster, maybe a little higher than his line, so it can actually ride over to the right. Jeff kind of grips it to the left a little bit, maybe a little too much anhyzer, unfortunately. Daymon here is throwing his storm, I believe. Throws that tricky anhyzer shot, and he puts himself putting. George looking to match Ziggy's. Looks like it came out a little hyzer. That disc is wickedly overstable. It's like a super pop top Nuke OS, and he's like the only one that can throw it almost.
Just kidding.
So that was George laying up for his 3. Here's Jeff looking to also do the same thing. Kind of caught behind the bush, so he's got to throw a little finesse shot, but he's pretty good at those, as you can see. So he's in there for his 3. Here's where Ziggy ended up. Checking the kind of crazy swirly wind. Again, looking to make this for birdie so he can get a couple strokes. Or get a stroke. Unfortunately, doesn't come up like he thought it was gonna. And Daymon converts for the 2. So hole 6 is par quote-unquote 3. Because as you can see, they're basically just thrown into a wall of trees. And it's kind of a luck box hole. There is a couple gaps that you can hit. And it's all pretty much on the left side there, as you can see. Where everyone's throwing, the disc just has to fly perfectly down the path for you. And I'm not sure why they call it a par 3 instead of a 4. I mean, it is kind of a tweener hole. But taking a 4 on this hole, no one ever really feels bad about, because you pretty much need an amazing shot to get within putting, and when you make that putt, it feels like an eagle. And then if you end up hitting one of the trees, inevitably at some point in time, you need a pretty good second shot to get up there as well. But everyone seems to actually get up here about halfway down the fairway. You can see where the pin is there. I'm going to speed up Daymon's process a little bit. It's kind of a tricky shot. He was in between a couple discs here. It's tough. You got to take your time on these shots. It's a tricky hole, and you don't really want to get anything more than a 4. You at least want to take a 3, maybe a 2 if you get the really, really nice shot. And George kind of doing the same thing. He's in a tougher spot than Daymon is. He's got to hit more lines. Throws a really, really nice shot. It was looking like it was going in. It just caught a tree just before the basket. And here's Jeff. and Ziggy, and their lies are literally right on top of one another. Jeff threw a pretty good line, also catching one of the crazy guardian toothpick trees. And Ziggy's trying to get up and down to get his 3 as well. And his does almost the identical thing that that Jeff Bauman's shot does. It's just a little bit lower, but they're both still just outside the circle. And there's Daymon also just outside the circle, hitting a nice putt for his 3. I'm not sure if you have noticed, but Daymon is a very good putter. Just by seeing the last few putts that he's thrown, he is really consistent. Jeff is also a really good putter as well. He just kind of splashes out the left side, unfortunately. And here's Ziggy for his 3. And centers it. And here's George. He's got a pair of nice blank jawbreaker challengers. Gets it in there for 3 as well. And hole 7 is kind of a neat little hole. It's a hole that you would want to birdie, I would say 9 times out of 10. They opened up this left side a little bit more. It used to be kind of a luck box skip hyzer thing on the right side, but they took out like 2 trees, so they actually opened this line up a little more on the left side. So a lot of people take the left side more often now. And Daymon and Ziggy throw a couple good shots. They're down there for birdies. George is looking to match their shots. Comes out a little early, but he ends up down there for putting, he ends up down there putting for 2. And Jeff throwing a shot that I have not seen anybody throw on this hole before, but it works out for him really well. And you will see here just shortly. And I tried getting a better angle of his line on this, but this basically summarizes the line that he had to take to try to make this for birdie. A really tricky putt. He had to hit like 5 gaps to at least get to the bucket, and he just caught one of the last trees. So Daymon converts for his 2. That's where Jeff's ended up with that awesome roller. And then Ziggy is basically just tap-in parked. So hole 8 is 330 feet. This is a really hard hole to film from the tee pad because it's really, really, really blind. Like, it's very, very hard to see. All you're going to see is just foliage and it dog legs to the left. So I'm filming at the elbow of the hole. And you can see it finishes off down that way. The first one hits a tree right next to me, just falls a little short. The second shot got up there pretty good ways. The third one landed right next to me as well. And then here's the last one. Throws a really good hyzer. I think the disc was just a little too slow. So it got about a little further than halfway, but he's got a pretty good line to get up there for a 3. And there's Daymon and Jeff giving each other a little bit of a hard time. It was very entertaining. But as you can see, they're both right next to each other. Jeff here has a pretty tough gap to try to hit right in front of him. And the green slopes down where the basket is at, so it's extra difficult to get up there close. Unfortunately, he catches that tree right in front of him, and it sails off to the left side of the fairway. I'm sure you could see on the left side. And here's Daymon with a similar shot. But fortunately, he's a couple of feet left of where Jeff was at, so he can actually take the more wide open shot. And he gets up there nicely.
Viking? Oh, shit.
And there goes Jeff on his little adventure. He was spotting where the basket was at, trying to get up and down from where he is, and that's a really tough spot to be in.
The Beast X.
And as we're taking some time here, there he goes. He throws another like forehand tomahawk roller thing, and he puts himself just outside the circle, looking to save that par or bogey. Sorry. And this is where George has ended up. Again, another tricky shot. I believe he goes kind of outside of this rough. Catches a little tree, but he's just on the edge of the circle putting for his 3. And then this is where Ziggy's shot ended up. Just short of the birdie, but taking a par on this hole is not the worst thing. It's a really tough hole. Here's Jeff outside.
Nice putt, man.
Centers it. I know it's a bogey, but man, that was a really nice 4 from where he was at after that second shot. Here's George for par. Gets it in there. Ziggy looking to do the same thing. And Daymon looking to match those 2 as well. So that's the basket for hole 9. You can actually see the fairway for it, and it's obviously straightforward. And Daymon almost nuts it, and there's just that little lone guardian tree right in the center of that line. That personally I feel like they should take out, but I believe they leave it in to add some strange lucky difficulty to the hole. But I still like the hole a lot. And Ziggy there was able to get past that tree that Daymon ended up hitting. They both threw basically the same shot, but Ziggy was able to get past, and Ziggy is very close to the pin. George also misses that little tree just barely. And I bet Jeff is trying to do the same thing. And unfortunately, just catches that tree. So again, Jeff is looking to get up and down for his par. Puts it right under the basket. Daymon looking to do the same thing. And this course can be pretty tough. A lot of it is you have to have luck on your side a little bit. Because if you're off just a little bit, and depending on how some trees can kick you, it can either be beneficial or it could just be really bad. But unfortunately, Daymon comes up short on that putt. And is going to be taking a bogey, but here is George looking to capitalize on this putt for his birdie, which it should be 100% of the time. I mean, he's 8 feet away. Same with Ziggy. So there's a couple birdies there. We got hole 10, dubbed Vietnam. It's only about 260 feet. Ziggy ended up blocking his shot, so I was able to show the first part of the drive, but I skipped on to George's because I didn't want to look at the back of Ziggy for X amount of time. But Ziggy gets up there for a putt. George is also right there. But there is a swamp in between the bush right at the edge of the pad that you can see. There's a gravel path, then there's the bushes, and then there's basically swampy, mushy area and just before the basket as well. And there's a lot of discs that do go in there. I do have a couple of mine in there as well. Daymon pulls his a little right, but he gets a little love with an anti-tree kick thing here, and again, just a little short, just off the front of the cage. Here's Ziggy looking to make another birdie. Centers it. And there's Jeff's. And George as well for birdie. I'd say that's pretty good on that hole, but here's hole 11. I got a couple different angles on this hole. I wasn't sure the best way I'd be able to capture it. But it does play to the right side of the fairway. Ziggy's got an amazing sidearm. And he came really close to acing that hole, even almost slipping off the edge of the tee pad. George also has a phenomenal sidearm, throwing that same crazy pop-top nuke OS thing. Heiser's out a little earlier, but he's still within the circle. Jeff, I think, has the best line on this hole and just catches that one guardian tree. And the trick is just throwing down the center and missing that tree. Daymon hugs the inside of the tree line, but he actually gets through, and he's going to be putting. But here's Jeff from, I'd say, about 50 feet away.
Nice putt.
Nails it. And again, Jeff is a really good putter as well. I mean, all these guys are great putters. As you can see by their forms, they're all pretty spot on every single time to match their form one after the next. There's not too much variance in it. There's Daymon with a nice putt over the bushes. Here's Ziggy from maybe 10 feet away. And then George with the CTP. With a fun straddle out of the center of the bush to his right. And then we got a star frame there. So hole 12 is kind of like hole 8. It's kind of dog-legged to the left. A little shorter. And you basically want to throw a mid-range on a hyzer. Make sure it stays left and then gets pretty far left. And usually when there's a lot more rain, there's a couple swamps that fill up on the left and right side that you can run into. But as long as you miss the trees, you should be all right. And it's kind of a tough hole to get to. You want it to stay going left fairly quickly. You don't really want to throw a slow hyzer at it. It's kind of got to get straight about almost 200 feet and then go directly left and skip that way. Because if you stay too straight, you end up in the trees. But if you end up coming up short, you can end up catching a couple trees. But so far, everyone has thrown a pretty good shot. I think George has ended up staying a little too flat for too long. And Daymon throws almost the perfect shot on this hole. He kind of hugged the left side of those trees on a hyzer, and it gets you up there looking for a good look at 2. So here's George. He's about almost 60 feet away, as you can see. His did end up staying a little straight. He caught a tree at the end of it, so it didn't really help him with getting closer to the basket, but it looks so good from this angle. I thought he had it, and just barely misses to the right side. Here's Jeff from a similar angle, probably 10 to 15 feet closer though. And that pole looks like it's in the way, but he's far enough to the right that it's not really affecting his line. Has the right line just a little too low. And Ziggy with one of the nicer drives on this hole, looking to convert for 2. And he gets it. So right now he's at 4 in a row, which is really good at this course. Here's George looking to get his par. Unfortunately, it was a hair low and does a little hopscotch and falls out the left side, which is really unfortunate. And of course, Daymon with a good shot and was about 15 feet away and gets that nice birdie. And we got another little dinker hole here. You can choose to do sidearm or backhand. You have 2 alleys that you can see. And Ziggy shows you the sidearm line. Gets up there pretty close. And Daymon shows you the anhyzer down the right side. Then we got Jeff also throwing a sidearm with that special tuna fell in. Throws it low, looking to get that skip. Does miss that tree, and he's well within the circle. And George is throwing a zone, looking to do the exact same thing. This is another hole that you want to get. It's almost just like a par 2 hole. And he throws the perfect shot, and is literally under the bucket, as you can see here. Ziggy ended up going a little long. found himself in some weird rough spot that he's kind of throwing like a sidearm putt at and just comes up short, unfortunately. Here's Jeff looking at a birdie from about 25 feet,
Nice putt.
centers it. And Damon's just a little bit closer than where Jeff was at. Gets the birdie, and Ziggy and George tap out for par and birdie.
Nice.
Now this hole is a super tight fairway, as you can see. I wasn't able to get the best angle at it, but you can see how it follows the dirt path, and then it's up on the right side of the fairway. And Daymon doesn't normally throw sidearms. I think I've seen him throw maybe 2 sidearms since I've known him for the past, handful of years. So it's extra hard throwing backhand on this hole, just by the way that it plays. Jeff unfortunately got a nasty kick, and George had a great line on it, but there's that lone twig branch in the middle of the fairway that kind of stops a lot of really good shots. Because you kind of want to hold the left side of the fairway unless you can throw kind of a nice little turnover that holds and holds and holds and misses all those trees and then finishes hard right, just like Ziggy shot. And Ziggy just nuts that fairway with that. What was that? I think he threw an enforcer. And here's one of the infamous Daymon Pugh sidearms. Just kind of was kept a little low and kind of skids out on him. And George is pretty good at sidearms here, so I'm sure he's trying to get up there to save his par. Had a really good line on it. Misses all those trees, and he's well up there for a par. It was a really, really pretty shot to watch. And then we got Jeff on the left side of the screen. Again, kind of forced to throw a tomahawk or roller kind of shot, trying to get out just to maybe save a par or have some sort of easy bogey. But this is where it ended up. He kind of caught an early tree, so it didn't get too far on him, unfortunately. Was looking to throw sidearm and get up and down, and unfortunately it was just a little early. Caught that tree again. And Damon's third shot is up there putting for bogey. Here's Jeff for his bogey, just laying up. And then this is where Ziggy's shot ended up. So he's putting for 2. And this is another hole that is a par 3. Centers that putt, and that's a great birdie to get. Definitely a bonus after missing the last hole. And then after a not so good tee shot, an amazing second shot. Definitely wanted to get the 3. It's just one of those unfortunate putts that's just literally like an inch short. So we get a couple bogeys and a double there, unfortunately. And here we got hole 15, just shy of 300 feet. Just like the last hole, it's just a tunnel shot. And this one is just on the left side of the gravel. And I think it might be kind of neat if they combine the 2 holes. Like you don't play the first pin, but you play to the second one. It'll be a really, really challenging hole. I'd be curious to see how people would play the hole and what one might throw on this hole. But Ziggy unfortunately came out early, caught the left side of the fairway. Daymon turned his over just a little too much and shot off to the right a little bit. George went down the center, and he was able to slide up, but it didn't slide quite enough. It kind of caught the tree and stopped him about 45 feet short, and Jeff gets it up there and flares a little left, but he's actually about pin high, looking at a birdie as well. But here's Ziggy looking to get up and down from some crazy angle. You can see on the right side of the screen his disc kind of catches a tree and shoots him off to the right. And it's Ziggy again, looking to save his par. And just looking to get up and down for bogey, unfortunately. And Daymon's kind of tucked in the woods, looking to get a birdie. Looks good, doesn't hit the chains, hits that tree and just gets some nasty roll, kind of like what George's did on the second hole. But here's George for birdie. He was really focused on this one. I felt like he really wanted to hit this birdie. As you can barely see him in his Team Discraft uniform, he just nails a really nice putt. And here's Daymon after his crazy rollaway. He's almost just as far as he was when he threw the putt. Centers that one. It was a really nice par save. After everyone's thrown at least their second shot, here's Jeff. And as you can see, it was almost like the chains weren't even there. They moved, but they didn't even attempt to really stop his disc. So now we get to the field portion of the course. You start out with hole 16. It's 400 feet. Maybe plays like 370 or so because it is downhill, but
Nice shot, man.
it's pretty routine. Just a 400-foot hyzer with whatever disc that you like throwing hyzers with. George throws the prime example. Daymon throws a great shot. Gets caught up in the bush a little bit, but he's about 10 feet away. Jeff also looking to do the exact same thing. And Jeff comes so close to acing that hole. Kind of really wish that bush wasn't there to see if that would have at least even hit metal. Ziggy throws a little wide out of the camera, but you can see it's coming to tail in. A little right, but he's still got to look. And everybody else, if you look, there's a green one short, an orange one in the bushes, and then one right underneath the pin, and Ziggy's the furthest one away. And he nails a really nice birdie, and everybody else taps in for birdie. So this hole I decided to film from the field. It'd be kind of difficult to see from the tee pad. So you can see basically post to post where they're throwing from, and they have to throw a really tight, really high hyzer to the other post, and then about 50 feet from the post inwards is the basket. And it's just kind of really hard to get to the pin, actually. And I believe there is one shot that does get in there. It skips a little bit for him and gives him a nice putt. Looked like Jeff hung his out to the right a little bit, so he's probably going to have like 100-footer or so. Ziggy's was a little wide as well, but it does skip a little bit for him, leaving him a pretty good chance at birdieing, or at least a look for birdie. Jeff was trying to give it a run there, but again, from that distance, it's tough to expect those to go in. Daymon trying to do the same thing. Just holds a little right. Ziggy from about 40, 45. Just nails a really nice bonus on this hole. And George with the closest drive off this hole. Or closest drive on this hole. Also looking to convert the birdie. And he does. Makes up for 2 holes ago. The hole 18 is also kind of hard to film. There's a couple rolling hills on the fairway, so I was actually up on the picnic table. And you can see George's drive. It fell just to the left of the screen. But it says 492. It probably plays a little longer than that because the first hill makes you throw much higher. And I don't know, it's kind of deceptive. There's a lot of swirling wind on this hole. It's kind of tough to read. But it is basically just an open field and you throw it as far as you can. Getting a 2 on this hole is a super bonus. Getting a 3 on this almost feels like a birdie, but not quite. So Jeff's kind of cuts over to the right. He got a pretty good gust of wind that kind of turned his disc over a lot faster than he wanted it to, but he's just looking to get up and down for a 3. And you can kind of see the lollipop right at the bottom of the screen there. And he gets it pretty close. So here's Daymon with his upshot. He's right there. George just looking to do the same thing. And he's maybe just, I don't know, about 120 feet out, I would say. Somewhere around in that range of guesstimation.
What's up?
If that's even a real word, I guess. And then Ziggy. Just looking to get a nice little layup. Thought he was going to come up a little short, but he ended up all right.
Nice putt.
There's Daymon with a nice putt. There's Ziggy a little high, but catches it for him. George doing the same thing, as well as Jeff. So star par on that hole is definitely not bad. So this hole is another blind hole where you're thrown up over a hill. Not quite as far as the last hole. It's about 300-ish feet. And if you go too far, you could end up OB or just lost. And then there's a bunch of rough on the right that you can get lost in, and then a bunch of rough on the left. And they actually opened this up quite a bit. It used to be from the basket, and then surrounded by it, it was maybe a 15-foot circle that you could land in. Anything outside of that was in some crazy rough. And they opened it up a bit to make it a little more fair, because you would literally have a 20-foot putt, and then you could have no line to it. So you'd be forced to just take a par from inside the circle putting. And Jeff wasn't so happy with his drive, but he ends up actually really nice. He's probably on the edge of the circle. Daymon was just a little long, and you saw him pitch out. And Jeff, looks like his just decided to glide for a couple seconds longer. Just didn't want to drop. Ziggy also a little long. Just gets right over the stump, but holds a little right for him, unfortunately. And Daymon to save his par. On that infamous 1-inch putt too low. It's a heartbreaker. But George with a beautiful putt for his birdie from about 4 feet away. And hole 20 yet again is another hole that is really tough to film. Down where that arrow is where the tee pad is, hidden behind all those bushes. And where that other arrow is, just left of that post over there, is where the basket is. And I did get a couple shots, but they were so hard to see in the sun that I just kind of edited them out, because it would just be kind of a waste of time. And then 2 guys ended up going up the fairway, which I thought everyone was actually going to go hyzer. But I guess they opened up the fairway, so it was actually a fair shot rather than a poke and hope. So the first one, Jeff was just laying up. He threw the hyzer and ended up coming up a little short. George went on the inside fairway. Just barely missed. Ziggy threw the hyzer, faded in a little early and cut through the trees. It looked like a good shot, like that was going to be parked, rolled down the hill, but he still makes a really, really nice putt for his birdie. And Daymon also threw up the fairway. He ended up right here and unfortunately again hits the front of the cage. And hole 21, just shy of 400 feet. As you can see, where I was zoomed in, you could not see the basket, but that's where the basket is at. But once you see Ziggy throw his shot, you will know where the basket is. Because he is literally, I don't know, about 10 feet behind the basket maybe. It's kind of tucked into the fairway, so if you throw a 400-foot hyzer and then sneak into the woods a little bit, you're definitely going to be putting. So here's George. Gets it a little lower, so he gets that skip from just on the fairway into the trees. Jeff yet again looking to match Ziggy and George, but his ends up, it stays off frame for a little bit, but it does fade back in here. His ended up turning over just a little bit longer than he wanted. Daymon going a little more direct at it, but the wind picks it up and hyzers him off a little earlier than he wanted to. And here's Jeff looking to throw in for 2. He's probably about 70 feet away, 60 to 70 feet. Just comes up a little short, but he's right there for his par. And Daymon is hidden on the left side of the screen there. It's not super thick where he's at, but he definitely has to hit a couple lines and go over some branches, but looked like he just laid up, and then Ziggy's just right there for his birdie. Just beautiful. Jeff looking to get his par. Centers it. And then here's George with the best drive of the group. He actually takes the CTP on this hole, and yet again, flawless form on that 3-foot putt. So hole 2 is probably the most poke and hope hole. This is where my battery started running out on me. So I was able to get all these drives, but unfortunately I was not able to get everybody's putt. So far so good. Everyone's through. Jeff hits the nicest line out of everybody so far. And Daymon's looking to match that. And this is a tough hole you really want to get because it's so short, but you just really got to miss the trees, and Daymon's holds right into it. He lays up there, and George is parked. Jeff is right there for his birdie. Ziggy's just in front of him. And so everyone gets the birdie on that hole, unfortunately for Daymon, but he does get his par. And then hole 23, it's a really easy shot. It's just a straight shot. There's just one tree that you have to miss that's on the left side, but it doesn't really come too much into play. Unfortunately, the battery ran out right here, and I missed everyone's drives and putts and everything. But there was a couple birdies and there was a couple pars. Unfortunately, I don't remember who ended up actually birdieing and who ended up actually parring, unfortunately. But I was able to borrow Jeff's phone for the very last hole, which is the most important, I would say. And the way I recorded it, it was kind of choppy and a little sloppy, but you're able to make out everyone's shots nonetheless. So I apologize about that, but it's not a very difficult hole to see, and I was able to zoom in, so it is quite pixelated, but you can still see all the shots. So the last hole is actually the short pad. It used to be a par 4, but now it's just a straight 334-foot mid-range or fairway driver shot. You can see the shots here. You can kind of make out the basket. You can make it out a little easier when I zoom in. But yeah, this is another hole you're looking at 2 rather than a much better finishing hole from the long pad. But they ended up bringing in a giant water slide that actually came into play. So if people ended up grip locking it over, they might kill some people. So unfortunately, it's just kind of a safety thing, but they're looking to make this a little better, maybe a different long pad placement, but they're stuck with this little dinker birdie hole. I mean, it's not the easiest, but
No doubt.
you do expect to kind of get it. But everyone gets down there for a nice birdie. Here's Pixelated Camo George for his birdie. Nails a nice putt. Shoots a pretty good round. George definitely had some unfortunate caged putts, but he still finished pretty strong. Daymon and Jeff hit their birdies. And then Ziggy with the hottest round on the card and for the day. He finishes at 61, which is 11 under par. He came back to take down Daymon and everybody else, and respectfully so with a round like that. That'd be tough to beat. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the round and the coverage. Sorry again for the last couple holes, but I'll see you next time.
All right, so hopefully you guys enjoyed the coverage. Again, sorry about the last couple holes, but hopefully I made up for that throughout the entire video. I really like how it came out, but really that's kind of your decision if you guys like watching it or not. Let me know if there's anything I can do to improve, maybe something that you'd like a little more, but I'm going to continue doing the whole breakdowns, and I got a few more coming out, hopefully by the end of this week. And so that's something for you guys to look forward to. I really do like making those videos, and I like that all the feedback that I'm getting is all positive. So again, thank you, and go check out discbaron.com. Get that 5% off. Use my PDGA number. Please like and subscribe, all that fun stuff, and we'll see you next time.